Never be afraid to do something you've never done before. Because if I didn't show up at that one community meeting, Planning Ahead would have never existed. Be open to accepting opportunities, even when you don't know where those opportunities are going to lead. Because sometimes those opportunities can be life-changing. This was like the pivotal moment for me that I would have never known if I hadn't been encouraged by Commissioner Wendy Jacobs. Was I enjoy helping people and the environment, and I would have never known that. Not only did I enjoy helping and bringing resources to community, being an advocate to communities, but it also taught me what I need to know about my own backyard. One of the programs I eventually created was From Backyard to the Community, and it really was around this entire concept. My interest was self-serving because I wanted to fix what was happening in my backyard. What ended up happening is I took that knowledge to not only fix what was happening in my own backyard, but brought it full circle and was able to start helping my community. So From Backyard to the Community is some of the pieces that came out of this work. And that's kind of how Planning Ahead got started. At some point, I left the LB Creek Watershed Association because I wanted to go and get additional education, take some time to really, hone my skills. And then when I reemerged, I came back as the business owner of Planning Ahead, 501c3 nonprofit organization.
And you brought it up, talking about Black and Brown communities. I would definitely be remiss if I didn't ask this, but unfortunately, BIPOC communities have always been involved in environmental stewardship.
Yes.
Care to share and talk about the intersectional history between environmentalism and social justice? We can talk about the toxic donut. You know that term?
No.
No? Okay. Well, okay. Toxic donut, to my research, a donut.
Yeah.
So they would put all, through housing discrimination.
Yeah.
They would put Black communities almost in a donut shape. And then they'll have chemical plants and sewage, just a bunch of nasty, unclean business around that donut. But that was just a term that I saw. But please, if you can talk about all of that, because that's huge. And we're seeing that now actually in Memphis. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The data centers in Memphis. But I want you to talk about it, but
I'm not even going to touch the data centers because that's a conversation in itself.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. And for those of you who subscribe to JSpeaks, thank you so much and welcome back. As you know, it is my mission, it is my passion to bring to you all conversation topics that are positive, motivational, educational, and informational. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to be here with Keshi Satterwhite, founder of Planning Ahead. Planning Ahead is a leading nonprofit advancing environmental justice initiatives through impactful education and community-driven programs. The organization empowers communities to lead the way in building equitable, resilient, and sustainable futures by advancing workforce development, community engagement, and environmental literacy, and creates inclusive learning environments that foster meaningful partnerships and equip individuals with the tools to thrive. Guided by their values, shared power, fairness, and service, Planning Ahead helps communities to turn knowledge into action for lasting environmental and social impact. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax, and most importantly, listen. And hopefully after today's episode, you understand for yourself that Planning Ahead envisions communities where residents are informed, leading initiatives, and empowered in order to create healthy, sustainable, and equitable environments. So Keisha, how are you?
I am doing amazing. Thank you for having me in your space this morning.
Absolutely, absolutely. The pleasure's all mine. How was your holiday, your Christmas?
I have no complaints. I have been very fortunate to be on a real break. Always in the month of December, I typically take 3 weeks off. It is my time to rejuvenate, refresh, and just really reground myself before I move into the new year. And I spend that time always around bodies of water, ocean particularly, so that I can have that level of grounding and really just resetting my frame of mind and preparing myself from a mental perspective of all the things that are going to come.
How did you come to find out that was beneficial to you?
I don't know how I came to figure it out, but I can tell you how long it's been happening. My son is 25 years old, and we have been every year in December, we have always been around a body of water since he's been 1.5 years old. So this is like when families say they have traditions, it is guaranteed. If anybody that knows me knows that in December she is going to be with an ocean view somewhere.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So what body of water did you spend time with this year?
This time we decided that we wanted to be at Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
I didn't used to, but I always now let my kids, since they're older, pick where we want to be. For the last couple of years, they have been favoring Florida. We have spent quite a bit of time in Palm Beach. And I was like, how about we just make it simple this year, thinking about air traffic control and those things and the delays and stuff. How about some place that we all could just drive to? I want to be able to do some additional shopping for the year. I got a car that I can just pack things in and won't have to pay like overage fees with trying to get it back through TSA. So let's just make it simple. So we spent time in North Myrtle Beach this year.
Beautiful, beautiful. Growing up, I used to travel to Myrtle Beach with my family. We're from New York, so we would make that road trip down there. It was great times.
Yeah.
But as we're approaching the end of the year, reflecting on 2025, yourself, your own personal development, growth within Planning Ahead, your nonprofit organization. Care to share any tidbits or any highlights that this year brought, or anything that you feel proud to share?
I'm proud to share that as we are getting ready to embark on our journey for 2026, that we are going into this new year with quite a few new partners that'll really help us do the work that I'm so passionate about doing. We're walking into 2026 with partnerships with NC State, with the CO2 Foundation. We're walking in partnerships with local organizations such as the Merrick Moore community, and really helping to elevate some of the work that we've already been doing inside of that community itself. And so I'm really happy to say that while it is already going to be quite a busy year, it is going to be a year of fulfillment on so many different perspectives, especially being able to do some of the mission aligned work that we want to do, but continue to make sure that we are helping communities and really being a partner along the way.
Beautiful. Wow. So that process of getting all of these partners, was that difficult? Was that new for you, or new for the organization?
It was new for the organization, and I'm definitely a person that is grounded in faith. And it really was me going out on faith. I am a person that has been a one-woman team for quite a while. I've had opportunity to bring in a part-time employee, and I'm continuing to grow my staff in 2026. And so bringing on these new partnerships and, you know, reaching out to say that in order for me to continue to do the things that I want to do, I really have to grow what those partnerships look like and be more intentional about the type of work that we are making sure that we continue to provide to meet community needs, and making sure that we have those resources available to really have a good 2026.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for explaining. Well, I'm happy to get right into today's interview. Like I said, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm happy for this interview.
Me too.
But before we officially get started, please take a moment to introduce yourself. You know, who is Keshi Satterwhite? And please spell out all that transpired leading up to you being the founder of Planning Ahead, your nonprofit.
Thank you for that. Well, I am Keshi Satterwhite, and I'm the owner of Planning Ahead, which is a nonprofit organization that is located in Durham, North Carolina. And I'm also the owner of an organization called A Healing Place. A Healing Place is a subsidiary of Planning Ahead that is a for-profit organization that really provides resiliency toolkits that really goes hand in hand in the work that Planning Ahead is doing. When I think about how I got here, long before there was a Planning Ahead or a Healing Place, I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm hoping that the person that I'm going to preference in this story, I have the opportunity to see this because she's never heard my story. So I think it would be valuable at some point. I'm actually going to send this to her. But one day, I used to live in an apartment. My two younger kids, at that particular time, my son probably was around 8 years old, and my daughter was around 4 years old. And the one thing that I wanted more so for my family was, and I'm a single mom, let me say that at that point, and I was at that particular time, I wanted my kids to have a backyard to grow up in. At that time, all they had was a parking lot out back to go and play in, which wasn't safe. Being transparent and having a moment here of vulnerability, there were many nights that I would go in my living room, I would put my kids to bed, go in my living room, and I would sit and cry. And I would sit and cry because my kids didn't have a real space to grow up. They didn't have a real backyard of their own. And that bothered me to no avail. So I would cry and pray, and ask Lord to give me the right guidance and pathway to be able to be a homeowner. A year and a half later, opportunity came for us to be able to go and start the home buying process. We went and seen 3 different houses. We came to this one particular house. My daughter came in and ran to the very back room and said, "This is my room." And I knew that was our house. So we were able to purchase this home, and they had a nice big backyard. What happened was, every time there was a heavy rainstorm, our backyard would flood. So the thing that I was praying for my kids was no longer something that they could use. At that particular moment in time, I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't have the language or the really terminology to understand what was happening. I definitely didn't have the resources to fix whatever was happening, but I'm a firm believer that all things happen for a reason. One day I was at home, and this young gentleman came to my front door. I would never remember what he came for, but he was canvassing the neighborhood for something. But I do remember his name. His name is Jacob. And he invited me to a community meeting. And I was like, well, I have free time on my hands. I'm going to go to this community meeting. I go to this community meeting, which is at Houghton Career Center. And in this room, there's a table sitting in the middle of the floor, and there are about 8 to 10 people sitting around the table, and there are lots of chairs along the wall. I go and sit in one of the chairs along the wall because I'm not familiar with what a community meeting is. I'm just here to listen. And so I sit down, but I didn't get a chance to get comfortable because a lady at the table said, no, come over here and sit at the table with us. And at first I kind of refused, like, no, I'm good. She's like, no, come and sit at the table with us. And I got to the table and she says, well, introduce yourself. Okay. I introduced myself. And by the time I was finished introducing myself, this lady said to me, and now you are going to be one of our co-chairs of this committee. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not what I'm here for. I say this lady, what I didn't realize at that time was who were the people that were sitting around this table. I know now what I didn't know then. The lady that was speaking to me and encouraging me to be the co-chair of this committee is Commissioner Wendy Jacobs. Sitting beside Commissioner Wendy Jacobs was former City Council member Julian Johnson. Sitting beside her was a influential Durham judge. Sitting beside him, and it just kind of goes on. But I wasn't familiar enough with the political landscape at that time to know who these key players were. I point out Commissioner Wendy Jacobs, and she's the one that I want to be able to see this video because I'm going to reference her quite a bit. She is really the reason why all of what I do started. So I did go on to be part of this committee and one of the community co-chairs here. And at some point along the way, and a little bit about this committee, it was Bill Bell's at that time, former Mayor Bill Bell's initiative. It was Bill Bell's initiative in 10. And so we were tasked with helping to eliminate or reduce barriers to employment. So we provided access to driver license restoration, to really helping people with child care access so that they could find employment, like some of these good things, providing bus passes so that people could have transportations to really go to interviews themselves. So I did this for a number of years, and I want to say by the end of that first year, Commissioner Wendy Jacobs said to me, hey, there's this job at the LB Creek Watershed Association. Go and apply for it. You're going to be perfect. And once again, I pushed back. Nope. I don't know anything about this type of work. And this type of work was environmental work. The LB Creek Watershed, again, was a 501c3 organization that it was based in Durham, North Carolina, really protecting land protection, really talking about environmental justice. What does that mean? Really teaching that environmental literacy. I had no knowledge of this. But again, keep in mind, I said I believe that everything happens for a reason. I am tenacious. And what I did do was go and study everything that I could study about the LB Creek Watershed Association. And I went to this interview and I walked away with the job. The job itself was a part-time, no, at that time it was a full-time community engagement specialist, and it was a 1-year contract. So I went and did this work, and I want to say about 7 months into the work, my supervisor said, do you want to stay longer? I said, yeah, I do. And somewhere down the line, I ended up was promoted into the community relations director. What I figured out, this was like the pivotal moment for me that I would have never known if I hadn't been encouraged by Commissioner Wendy Jacobs, was I enjoy helping people and the environment. And I would have never known that. Not only did I enjoy helping and bringing resources to community, being an advocate to communities, but it also taught me what I need to know about my own backyard. One of the programs I eventually created was From Backyard to the Community, and it really was around this entire concept. My interest was self-serving because I wanted to fix what was happening in my backyard. What ended up happening is I took that knowledge to not only fix what was happening in my own backyard, but brought it full circle and was able to start helping my community. So From Backyard to the Community is some of the pieces that came out of this work. And that's kind of how Planet Head got started. At some point, I left the LB Creek Watershed Association because I wanted to go and get additional education, take some time to really, hone my skills. And then when I reemerged, I came back as the business owner of Planet Ahead, 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Wow. So, per your story, I guess you were supposed to have those flooding issues.
I was.
That would preempt you to want to go to the community meeting.
I was. Absolutely.
Wow, beautiful. So that whole time span that you just talked about, how long was that? Was that 5 years? Was that 10 years?
That time span really was about a 3.5 year period.
3.5 year period.
Yes.
And you were able to do all of that just solely off of pure enthusiasm, and before you ended up getting your more formal education.
That's right.
Wow, that's beautiful. So what about the environmental climate sector is something that you're still trying to kind of grasp and still trying to work on being better in, if that makes sense?
I'm always working on increasing my knowledge. For me, it's very important to be very knowledgeable around the initiatives, the work that I'm leading, because I've never been afraid to share my knowledge. Knowledge is powerful to me. The more that I know, the more that I can share with community. And so I'm always working to learn the latest technology, the latest trends, more about extreme heat events, more about what's causing flooding. What are some of those factors or what do we need to be able to mitigate some of what's happening? So I'm always working to increase my knowledge. I love learning. I'm passionate about learning.
And what is your preferable way to learn? Is it libraries? Is it work groups?
I think
social media? I don't know.
My preferred learning method, I'm a visual learner. I want to take information. I think if I had something unique about me, I'm very good at taking complex information and breaking it down so it's digestible, something that's easier for others to understand. I'm a very visual person, so I'll take some of these more complex concepts, break it into something visual, and then be able to share that with whoever is interested in being able to know that. I smiled when you said the library because a side story, at some point my car was broken in and my purse was stolen. And I remember just standing telling the police, oh my God, I just need my library card back. Because I love the library. If I could just sit in the library day in and day out, I probably would just sit in a corner in the library and just soak it all in. The library is such a fun place in so many different ways. It is a place for all types of learners, because there's so much information and different ways that information is presented to help you enhance whatever it is that you want to learn about. So yeah, I love the library.
Now, doing my own research about the environmental and climate sector, it is to my understanding that Black women in this discipline are not only are the least represented, but they also have a very low retention rate.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, care to share about some of the barriers that you had to face, some of the barriers that you had to overcome in order to be where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, interesting enough, I've faced barriers that are not always obvious on paper, but they are deeply felt in practice. And I'll give 2 examples of what that is. One example is when I think about the lack of representation in leadership, but also in the decision-making process when it comes to women of color. One of the things that happens to me quite often is I'm invited to share my perspective. I'm invited to share some of that community insight, but I never really have the opportunity to have that real authority to lead when it comes to the strategy, to the budgetary pieces, when it comes to really having the long-term direction of what it really looks like. I would say another example is Black women are often invited to be or do the project-based work when it comes to projects, or be the ones that are invited to do the pilot projects or do the community outreach. However, we're not backed when it comes to having the support around the resources, the stability, and the institutional backing to really make that long-term impact in our communities.
Why do you believe that is? Do you think it's a trust issue? Do you believe that since there are so few Black women, that no one has been able to prove themselves enough to kind of set like the standard? Like what?
What do I think that is? I would say, or what I think is are we afraid to let women of color into those spaces to really elevate the work that we're already doing? Is there a sense of being afraid that if I let her in here, maybe she's going to overtake what we've already done? Is there a sense of if we let her into this space, her knowledge is going to be more powerful than the messaging that we've already been putting out? So maybe it's more around fear of what could be, as opposed to let's build a trusting relationship that really should be around our shared purpose. Our shared purpose is around the environmental justice. Our shared purpose really should be around supporting our communities. Our shared purpose really should be around bringing those resources and access. Letting down our guards enough to say there is enough space for all of us to have a place at the table.
So what has helped you endure in these rooms? I mean, I grew up in a predominantly white community, worked at corporate jobs where I was one of very few Black people. Mm-hmm. It's very uncomfortable. And even if you're passionate about the focus that you are there for, it could be kind of daunting to keep the fire burning if you're not surrounded by people who look like you. So what was it the shared purpose?
I motivate me.
You motivate you?
I motivate me because, like yourself, I've always worked in corporate America, and I'm typically one of few African American people that are in that space. Sometimes I've been in spaces where I'm the only African American person in that space. I'm just comfortable being who I am. I'm headstrong, and I already have decided this is what's important to me. I'm going to do the work no matter how hard, no matter how difficult it is. And yeah, it really is me saying, I'm so passionate about this. Nothing's going to deter me from doing what needs to be done.
Beautiful. So you brought up the term environmental justice, why we're here, planning ahead. Mm-hmm. So for our viewers and just for educational purposes, mm-hmm. please, what does that mean, environmental justice? It often gets misconstrued with environmental injustice.
Yeah.
And how is Planning Ahead a leading nonprofit advancing environmental justice initiatives in North Carolina?
I think the simple way of saying what environmental justice is, it really does mean ensuring that no community is burdened with a disproportionate share of environmental harm. That's the simple way of really saying what it is. Planning Ahead is working to lead that charge in a few different ways. One of the ways that we've been able to do that is through our climate literacy work. So making sure that we have our workshops around extreme heat events, around flood mitigation, really working in partnership with organizations that are already embedded inside of the communities that we are wanting to target, just like Planning Ahead is already embedded inside those communities. Making sure that we have our government entities on board, such as Durham County Emergency Management, and partnering with them. We have an upcoming workshop in March 28th, as a matter of fact, where we are hosting it with a range of government entities and local organizations to be able to do workshops around what does extreme heat and flooding, air pollution mean to me, and what are some strategies, tools, and resources that I can take away from these conversations that I can use now, that make sense, that are not over convoluted, for me to be able to make sure that I'm prepared for the next extreme heat or flood event.
So these workshops are not just teaching and education, you're also providing resources?
We are. One of the resources that we are going to provide, and is one resource with multiple resources, is our climate resiliency toolkit. We have a few of those. We have one that is a extreme heat toolkit, and we have one that is a flood mitigation toolkit. Those toolkits themselves give us opportunities to make sure that when you walk away from these workshops, you already have something tangible in your hand that you can take home and use to get prepared for these events. It's not a matter of if a extreme heat event or a flood event is going to happen. It's a matter of when. One of the things that Plan Ahead is doing in the forefront of all of this is making sure that our communities are prepared to handle and navigate these events.
And how have you seen the preparedness over the years concerning these two topics?
That there's been a lack of preparedness,
that
we are scrambling. So these events have happened. Now we are trying to be reactive as opposed to proactive to these events. I want to say in the last couple of months, one of the things I have seen, which has been good, and Planning Ahead has been part of this process, is that we are getting invited to more of these conversations to help communities get prepared for these events. A partnership with Urban Ministries of Durham, we were invited to be a guest speaker for them to really talk to their clients. As a matter of fact, 51 of their clients around preparing themselves for extreme heat events. Here's the thing, and I want to be clear about this. Planning Ahead is not the expert when it comes to extreme heat events, especially when we're stepping into a space such as the urban ministries. The clients are the experts. They're the ones that are outside when we're having these extreme heat events, that are navigating these events day in and day out. So instead of coming to this conversation and speaking to them like Planning Ahead is the expert, we actually invited them to help lead that conversation. Tell us about your experience. Tell us about how you've prepared. Tell us what resources and additional tools that you need. But we also had a chance to bring in our toolkits because it was spot on with what they had already said. This is what's happening. This is what we need. This is how we want to be able to prepare.
So I know that you don't have the toolkits with you today, but if you can recall, what is inside of a flood toolkit? What's inside of an extreme heat toolkit? Just so we can give our audience some type of picture of what you're talking about.
The thing that matters to me more so than anything is people matter to me. And so when you open either of these preparedness toolkits, it's a whole experience. It's already packaged inside of its own unique box, but even the box itself is something that you'll be able to use and not just the contents that are packaged inside the box. I wish I had one here to show, but even when you take the box and just flip up the lid, the very first thing you see in bold, bright orange letters is because you matter. I believe that every individual that I have an opportunity to come in contact with, or maybe not, maybe that toolkit is what is their first interaction with us. Maybe our website is that very first interaction. You will see that messaging wove throughout all that we're doing because you matter. I do this work because people matter. Making sure that they're prepared and they're safe matters to me. So that's the very first thing you see when you flip over the lid of these boxes. So if we're thinking about the extreme heat box and you open it up, you get some information. There's content there with some QR codes that gives you access to some virtual information, so that, let's just say that maybe you don't have time and you don't have your box on you. You can scan that QR code and keep that information on your phone. So if you are out and you're experiencing an extreme heat event, here's some tips and tools, next steps, things that you should be doing to make sure that you keep yourself safe. The same thing with our flood preparedness box themselves. They include QR codes, and one of those QR codes is a family preparedness plan. So before an extreme flood event happens, we want you to be able to sit down with your family and already prepare for this event. So there's a list of things that you and your family will already go through and talk about before this event happens. We already know where we're going. Here's some emergency contact numbers we need to keep on hand, medications, blah, blah, blah type situation. Not only that, that flood preparedness box itself has some items that are really usable, such as a waterproof pouch to be able to put in your most important documents, so that you can quickly grab maybe this box or maybe just that pouch itself, and you have all those essential documents that you may need when you're experiencing a flood event that didn't get damaged because they were already in this pouch itself. With this flood preparedness kit has the old school crank radio with a flashlight on it, so that you still are connected to the outside world when you lose power. If there's a flood event, that you still can hear and get information and understand what's going on around you, but then you have that flashlight, so it's like a 2-in-1 type thing. So these kits have different things that really help you with that preparedness, you and your families, to make sure that you are prepared. When we think about our extreme heat kits, there are several things. One is a SPF hat that you can put on your head, a cooling towel that goes around your neck or your forehead to help keep you cool. There is a water bottle with a hydration pack. There is FPS lip chap, the things that you wouldn't think about, or these last minute things you would have to run and gather. It's all right there together for you. So the flood mitigation box itself, that preparedness box, one of the cool features that I really like, it has a Durham flood map in it. So there are different versions. The one that we use for Raleigh, it has a Raleigh flood map in it. Let's get familiar with where these flood areas are, and let's talk about it. So that's one of the things that we do in our workshops. We stop and we map these assets. Where are these flood events happening? Let's start collecting that data so we can continue that conversation and figure out what additional resources that we need to have in place to really start thinking about strategic ways to mitigate what is happening in our communities.
Wow, well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with the flood maps, do you see yourself updating those flood maps regularly? Because I know with climate change, there's a lot of major rivers that are drying. I know the world is just changing. Mm-hmm. Does that affect the flood maps, or?
So I'm hoping with our partnerships, that is very helpful to have these partnerships with our government entities and stuff, and making sure that we have the right partners to make sure that we do have the current, most recent versions of those flood maps inside of the kits themselves, even having that digital access to those flood maps so that when people look at them, they have the most recent version of what that is.
That's great. That's great. And are you guys looking into creating any other toolkits, or are you going to stop with extreme heat and flood?
We have an idea to create at least 2 additional toolkits. We are currently in the prototyping process. We're working on our MVP for that. But we also, before we just start going out and creating new kits, we need to make sure that we are including our community voice in that process that really helps shapes what that toolkit is, because there's no need to create something that is not really designed for community, but it really should be designed by the community. And so that's what we're doing in the background.
Okay, so you're letting, I guess, community members,
Community
voices
help shape what that next toolkit is.
Did the community members shape the extreme heat and the flood toolkit as well?
They did. So in the background, long before some of the other things, Planet Head does quite a bit. We have different partners that will reach out to us and contract us out to be able to design their curriculum and facilitate their environmental workshops. And we've been working with one partner, Partners for Environmental Justice, for since 2014. That's a story in itself. It used to be that Partners for Environmental Justice would call us for like one time, can you come in and facilitate this, because they are a nonprofit organization too, and as they were going through transition, they would need some additional supports to continue their programming, and so they would lean into Planet Head, said, can you come in and do our programming until we hire, a program director? Sure, no problem. So it used to be one-off situations until about 2 years ago. We got this call from Partners for Environmental Justice saying, just putting the idea on the table. If we wanted to extend a 3-year contract, would you even be interested? And I said, yes, I would. So the last 2 years, I've been designing their curriculum and facilitating what is called the Partners for Environmental Justice Watershed. And what this program is, there are 4 different cohorts throughout the year. And when I first started with the programming for Partners for Environmental Justice, there used to be 12 community members that would show up for these classes. And so the classes themselves are anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks, depending on which session you go in. The summer session is always 5 weeks, but the other 3 that happen through the year are 7 weeks. End of last year, by the time we wrapped up our programming, that 12 community members that were coming into the space had increased to 45. And the reason why it was 45, because only 45 people could fit in the room. We had a waiting list of people that wanted to be part of this environmental education. So some of the things or takeaways I get from that was, 1, you don't realize what community needs until you start working in communities, and the information in a way that they use it to be able to enhance their daily lives. Our environmental classes themselves was enhancing the community members' daily lives. Therefore, we started getting more and more people signing up for this class, and not just more and more people, we had repeat people signing up. So the unique thing about me was every session for the last 2 years has been a whole different session. I designed a new curriculum every single session so that people that want to come back in and be able to go through the process again through another cohort, they're getting new information. Not only that, not just getting information, but how are you using that information? So those community members are also responsible for completing a community project as part of their graduation requirement. So you're not only just receiving information, you're taking that information and applying it real time to your community in a project that matters to your community.
So what does a typical community project look like?
Oh man, there's been some great ones. Let me think about some of my favorites. Some great ones. One of my favorites was a young lady decided that she wanted to do pollinators. She wanted to do a pollinator garden in her yard that was accessible to the entire community, so that she would start the process of growing these pollinator plants, and that anyone in the community at any time could come and have access to these pollinator plants, take whatever they needed and go and plant them in their yards. So then you're increasing the number of pollinator plants that are in this community. Another great project that I thought was, this is great, a young lady decided to make her own rain barrels. So being able to get all the materials that she needed to make this rain barrel and put that in her backyard so that she could water her garden, her plants, so that she could wash her car. Like that sustainability concept. I get excited. Like I just started smiling about this, thinking about these projects. There have been some amazing things that have come from the community residents that have had access, and I'll talk about that a little bit later too. The communities that I tend to engage, more of our black and brown communities, tend to lack access to resources. But when you give them resources, there are amazing things that come from that.
I agree. And you brought it up, talking about black and brown communities. I would definitely be remiss if I didn't ask this, but unfortunately, BIPOC communities have always been involved in environmental stewardship.
Yes.
Care to share and talk about the intersectional history between environmentalism and social justice? I mean, we can talk about the toxic donut. You know that term?
No.
No. Okay. Well, okay. Toxic donut. What? To my research, a donut.
Yeah.
So they would put all through housing discrimination.
Yeah.
They'll put black communities almost in a donut shape, and then they'll have chemical plants and sewage, just a bunch of nasty, unclean business around that donut. But that was just a term that I saw. But please, if you can talk about all of that, because that's huge. And we're seeing that now actually in Memphis. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The data centers in Memphis. But I want you to talk about it, but
I'm not even going to touch the data centers because that's a conversation in itself. But I would say when we think about environmental justice, it didn't start in the boardrooms. It started in the backyards. That really what happened. And our BIPOC communities have always been environmental stewards of our health, of our food, of land management, because we really had to use those skills to survive. The environmental justice movement emerged when communities realized there was a really consistent pattern of flood-prone development that consistently showed up in black and brown communities. A pattern of polluting industries that was showing up. When we think about this, these things in itself really started to intensify the injustices when it comes to climate change. I mean, I don't want to talk about slavery in this conversation, but I want to talk about slavery in this conversation and really if you think about the big picture and how all this is connected, I'm not going to have that conversation today.
Oh, why not?
I'm not going to have that conversation today, but I'll just say that historically, in our more marginalized communities, the undesirable things show up. The junkyards, the plants that are causing the most pollution, because they feel like we're not going to speak up. And your voice is very powerful. But when you're not even given a place to sit at the tables of the conversations of the things that's directly affecting your community, how are you heard? What happens when you understand what's happening in your community, because that junkyard and all the environmental hazards that are happening, the oil that's sinking into the ground and how that's affecting your community, you know what's happening, but maybe you can't articulate that at these boardroom conversations, or you're not getting invited to those boardroom conversations. Who's coming to help you prepare? Who's coming to make sure you have the tools you need to sit in these important conversations that are shaping what's happening to your communities? Not the people on the outside of community that's coming in and dropping in what we think the solution is, and not spending time with the real experts, which are the community residents that's experiencing this day in and day out, that's diminishing their quality of health. Who's teaching them the language that they need to say, my voice matters? You're not going to be able to just do in and everything in my community. No to that data center. No to that junkyard. No to that factory that's producing X, Y, and Z, that is now starting to provide that air pollution. Who's helping us with collective voice? That's where planning ahead comes in. That's where that advocacy comes in at. Yeah.
Wow. So before planning ahead started, how did the Durham-Raleigh area look?
I mean, there's a lot of planning ahead, so to speak. There are already the environmental stewards, those black and brown communities that were already stewarding the land, their communities, and what was happening, what is happening. Let me correct myself. In our communities, they were already doing the work. They are doing the work, but we're doing the work in silos. How do we start working in silos, come together as a collective so that we have more bargaining power? Because I don't know what John Joe over here is doing, but they know, and they're doing an amazing job. How do I know what this organization on this side of Durham is doing and how much they are moving the needle? But if they came together and then this organization joined, and then this organization joined, how powerful and beautiful would that be? Because then you can't ignore all of our voices.
Right. So I know that so is Planning Ahead working with other Planning Aheads?
Planning Ahead is working with other organizations that are doing this work in this community.
Okay.
And communities in Raleigh and Durham. The Merritt Moore community, the Bradtown community,
Okay.
Partners for Environmental Justice, North Carolina Environmental Justice Center, so other organizations that have the same interest as Planning Ahead.
That incorporate community voices.
That's right.
Got it. And talk about how climate change impacts environmental justice.
It intensifies the inequities that already exist. That's exactly what it does. When I think about communities that have historically already been overpopulated, overexposed to pollution, to contaminated waters, to not having an invitation to those community conversations that are making decisions about their communities. These communities are often the ones that are being severely impacted by the extreme heat events, by the flooding that is taking place, yet they are the ones that are least likely to have access to the preparedness resources, to the political power that they need to be able to move the needle, to the recovery funds to help them when one of these extreme heat events take place.
Interesting. I mean, that makes sense.
It makes sense, unfortunately.
Because the climate change is making Mother Earth act improperly.
That's right.
So if you're already living in an environment that doesn't cater to your needs, it doesn't help when Mother Earth is going down as well.
That's right.
Wow. So also doing some research, green chemistry, that term came up quite frequently when I was looking up environmental justice, environmental injustice, and, just taking a deeper look into, what impacts our environment and in turn impacts the stewards of our environment. So if you could care to share or care to talk about, what is green chemistry and how can it enhance environmental justice?
The way that I see this is disposable products, they don't disappear.
They don't.
And the true cost of what is happening is it shows up in polluted air, in our contaminated waterways. It shows up in the bodies of the community residents that live the closest to our manufacturing plants and waste sites themselves. So the green chemistry has the ability to help with environmental justice because, making sure that we're making safer products that'll be able to mitigate some of the toxic effects that the workers of these production plants are experiencing, but also the residents in the communities that live close to these production facilities, these waste sites themselves.
So is paper straws, is that considered green chemistry?
Paper straws is, I would say yes. I would say I love biodegradable, like silverware, cutlery itself.
Oh wow, I didn't know that exists.
In my classes, I like to give away prizes sometimes, and I would make sure that I have such things as those, these wonderful bookmarks that I love, that once you be able to use those in your books, and if you've had enough of them, then you take those bookmarkers and you plant them, and then they become pollinator plants. Having stuff that is reusable in our communities that helps to elevate and not take away from or harm, because we have enough harm in community as well, is important. And this green chemistry really is a great way to be able to help protect our communities and the people that are in our communities.
So I know that green chemistry is one subsect of trying to protect our communities and the stewards of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Any other areas of focus related to green chemistry that you feel as though that you want to share or speak about?
Not at this time.
Okay. Okay. So, climate change. Again, back on climate change. A lot of climate change skeptics believe that living a green life can be expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Care to disprove that? Or is it expensive? Or if we want to try to live a cleaner, greener life, what types of tips or recommendations do you have to share?
I thought about this for a little bit. And I came up with 2 questions.
Okay.
Expensive for who and compared to what is what comes to mind here. Eco-friendly lifestyle often gets framed as costly because the way that it's affecting us as an individual, but the real cost really lies in the unsustainable systems themselves, would be my response to this question. So I think we really need to think about how we're designing systems so that they really are more affordable to support communities that are already struggling to pay their mortgage, that are already struggling to make sure that they have food. Let's think about food deserts. You know, you really have to think about priorities here. So I'll just lean back into the questions: expensive for who and compared to what?
Does planning ahead have a hand in, system manipulation? Or, because you said that you're going to be working with the government?
They're coming up, and this year we're doing a series of 4 workshops, and they build on each other. And some of the government entities that we are working with is going to be Durham Emergency Management, with City of Durham Stormwater itself. And so hopefully we'll have an opportunity with some of these partnerships to be working on not only our projects, but their projects as well across Durham, to really think about what does this system change look like? What does policy really look like? And how do we make sure that community voice is heard loud and clear in shaping both of those things?
Interesting. Interesting. Well, I want to move over to focusing on planning ahead in particular.
Okay.
So care to share, as the founder, if you can get into a little bit more detail. You did mention how you provide environmental education. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about, what exactly takes place in a workshop. But also, how do you also support climate resilience and community-led leadership?
Okay. Love this question. I would say that planning ahead, we are moving people from awareness to readiness to leadership. Is really what our pillars and our goals are in this process. We really are making sure that residents are prepared when it comes to extreme heat events and flood mitigation, and really having tools that are readily accessible that help them when that next event occurs. Planning ahead is, of course, as I mentioned before, working with a number of partners that are making sure that these communities, Durham community, Raleigh, Wake County communities as a whole, that we're servicing as many people as possible and making information as accessible as possible to communities themselves. So we want to make sure that not only are communities being invited to these conversations, but they're helping to design the outcomes so that they are able to help lead in their own communities, because it really is about sustainability, not just showing up and providing information, but making sure that community residents can be the real advocates, which they already are, and can lead the movements within their communities.
Yes, a lot of, on your website, I read equitable, resilient, and sustainable. So you educate these individuals in your workshop so that they can take that information and then become community leaders within their neck of the woods.
Absolutely.
Wow. So these workshops, are these workshops educating strictly the leaders? And then the leaders, so like, do you have a leader from this city, a leader from Raleigh, a leader from Durham, a leader from Cary, come to a workshop, and then they have their own little, not silos, but I guess their own little groups that they teach? Or do you teach everybody? And like, is everybody a leader? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Everybody is a leader. We are teaching the mom that has 2 kids.
Okay.
Who needs that language, that additional support, that additional knowledge to understand, why can't my kids play in the backyard? What methods, what resources, what supports are available for me to stop the flooding that's happening in my backyard? What is a rain garden? Because that's the solution for that flooding problem. How do I use a rain barrel? What is a permeable surface? Funny story that I say permeable surface. It's not even a story. When I first started doing this environmental work at the Ellerbe Creek Watershed Association, I laugh at the term permeable surface. And I laugh because if you don't position your messaging in a way that makes sense to the individuals, the communities that you want to serve, then there's already a barrier in place. Because I don't understand what you're saying anyway, so I'm not going to pay attention. So I started thinking about the terminology. What is a permeable surface? The easy way of saying that, it's a sidewalk. Well, why can't I just say sidewalk? Once I get you interested and you understand, because I understand what a sidewalk is. I don't understand. When I was that single mom, 2 kids, backyard flooding issue, you would have said permeable surface to me, my barrier would have went up immediately. I don't even know what you're talking about, and so therefore I feel like I'm already being excluded from the conversation. But if you would have came to me and said, the sidewalk that's in the front of your home, I know what a sidewalk is. I can identify with a sidewalk. I don't identify with a permeable surface. Not until later on in the conversation, you're giving me these additional tools, additional language that really enhances me so that when I want to go and sit at this table that I've been excluded from, and somebody uses that terminology, I'm no longer excluded because I know exactly what you're talking about. Because I've had opportunities with planning ahead to enhance my knowledge, to do more of this advocacy work in my community, to really increase my resiliency plan, my strategy, my resources, so that I can really lead and advocate not just for myself, but for my community.
So how often do these workshops occur?
There's going to be a series of 4 in 2026. And again, like I said, that very first one is coming up on March 28th. And we are hoping to have anywhere between 45 and 50 participants. The registration window has already opened. And so I'll be doing more heavy advertising around that. And just as soon as we come past the new year, let's get past the holidays first. Get past and be able to do that. But there'll be 4 of those. And long before we got to this very specialized set of workshops, because these workshops are a combination of a few things. One, we were taught very specific about extreme heat events, about flood events, about what resources are available through these government entities that you can take advantage of that are free to low cost. We are going to make specific time for us to do asset mapping of the communities themselves so that you already have that knowledge walking out of these sessions about what areas in Durham, what areas in Raleigh are more prone to flooding and what is causing that flooding. Session number 1, workshop number 1. Workshop number 2, now that we've had time to do this asset mapping, what are we going to do with this information? Thank you for collecting this data, which a lot of people are good at, but collecting data is just the beginning of it. What are we going to do with it? Now we're going to take this data itself and use it and make it something more meaningful. Use that information to start thinking about our strategies to mitigate the problems that are happening in these flood-prone communities, in these areas that are seeing the most extreme heat events. Who are the partners that need to help us with these mitigation strategies? What additional resources and tools we need to be able to bring to the table? So it's a continuation, this series of workshops that are happening in 2026, that we start with the basic information, do that data collection, take that data collection and start building and implementing, leading, advocating, making our voices be heard.
And how does this differ from how you did things before?
Before, it is more about specific themes when it comes to environmental literacy. Maybe this time, this particular theme is around water pollution. What does that look like? Why does it happen? What are how do you take and reduce your environmental footprint type situation? Let's focus on this theme. Next cohort that's coming through, let's pick a different theme. Let's think about extreme heat. What is it? How does it affect my health? And that is something that we really need to talk about. What does that look like for an older person that is experiencing extreme heat event? What is that? For people that don't have air conditionings in their home, how do I prepare before we get to that, to the summer season? If you think about an extreme heat related, not so good experience, I don't want to say death, but at 90 degrees, if you are outside in the sun and you don't have the proper coverage, maybe no tree canopy, you can't get to a cooling center, maybe you can't get to a place that has an awning, what is the effects on your body? So we'll go in depth and talk about what that is, what strategies that you need to already be thinking about and putting in place just in case you find yourself in that situation. What about the people that work outside during the summer months and that's your job? How do you start protecting yourself? What does that look like? And thinking about it. So the difference between the workshops is these are more theme focused on a particular environmental topic, as opposed to this is a series that we are going to build. We're not just going to focus on a theme.
Yeah,
we're
actually theme every time.
And we're going to actually build and take the data that we have collected in that first workshop, and we're going to start figuring out what is our strategy to start combating, mitigating what is happening. What are the partners? What are the tools? What are the resources? What does this mean for my community? How can I get involved to shape the policies that are preventing us from having the resources that we need in our communities? Like this workshops or a series of workshops, these 4 in 2026, is a larger, more ongoing type situation as opposed to a more targeted, focused on theme, kind of one-time thing. Because going back to what I said originally, I change those themes for each cohort that comes through. So you just get this for a very specific amount of time, and then we move on to something else.
Yes, so in the past, it was more so for educational purposes.
Yes.
Educating you on a specific theme. This year, it sounds like we're learning a particular theme, but we're also working towards taking action.
Yes.
Got it. And I also read on your website that it is your mission to transform environmental education into economic mobility. Care to talk about the how behind that?
Yes, because we teach skills and not just concepts. That's what it looks like for us. We create those pathways through partnerships, through paid and volunteer opportunities, provide the exposure to green careers. So we're teaching you these skills. What are you going to do with them? Is it just for the fun of it? How does this help your future? Let's think about how you can take this and apply this to a career pathway for yourself. When we think about when people see themselves as decision makers and as problem solvers, what does that do for us? What does that do for them? You know what it does? What it does is it really does provide this educational pathway for them to have a way to create income for themselves. It gives them opportunity to build that influence. It gives them an opportunity to really think about their long-term stability. So we're not just here providing these concepts. We're providing teachable skills that could lead to livable wages. What does this look like in a Black and brown community that has never seen themselves as a environmental specialist?
Transferable skills, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Well, Keisha, that's all the interrogation or the questions that I have for today's interview. Any lasting comments that you would like to say about yourself, planning ahead, anything that you would like to leave the audience with?
I would leave the audience with never be afraid to do something you've never done before. Because if I didn't show up at that one community meeting, planning ahead would have never existed. Be open to accepting the opportunities, even when you don't know where those opportunities are going to lead. Because sometimes those opportunities can be life-changing.
Well, Keisha, thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful interview. I believe that you did well. I hope that you feel as though that you did well. I know that we talked about you being a perfectionist, but I thought that this was a great conversation.
Thank you.
What you're doing with planning ahead is exceptional. And during these times with the climate changing and just the wickedness that's happening in this world when it comes to money and unfortunately impacting our Black and brown communities, It's very disheartening. And although we might not have the power to stop it, being able to learn and understand what power we do have to make the best out of what our circumstances are presenting us with is invaluable.
It is.
It's invaluable. And I'm happy to hear that your organization is growing.
Thank you.
2026 sounds like a very beautiful year for you in planning ahead, and I'm so excited and I'm happy to hear that. And much success to you, much success to your organization and all the people that you work with and all the people that you touch and impact.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and thank you for giving us a platform to share really around environmental justice, how it shows up in our day-to-day practices. What does it look like for Black and brown communities who feel like, and I'm going to stress, feel like they don't have a voice, but they really do have a voice. And just making space for all of us. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. I thought that was great.
Really great.
I thought that was great.